History is not always what it seems. What you are about to see is not myth but documented reality. Welcome to Livion Tales.
History is often written in black and white. Heroes and villains. Saints and sinners. We are taught to look at certain figures and see only light, absolute purity. But what happens when the light is so bright, it blinds us to the shadows? Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, the Mahatma, the great soul, the man who brought the British Empire to its knees without firing a single shot. You know the legend. The loincloth, the salt march, the unwavering commitment to non-violence. But there is another story. A story that doesn't fit the statue in the town square. A story of a man who, before he fought for Indian independence, held views on race that would shock his modern admirers. A man whose experiments with celibacy involved testing his willpower in ways that history books often conveniently forget. This is not an attack on a legacy. This is a restoration of reality. Today, we peel back the layers of the legend to find the man underneath. Welcome to Livion Tales. This is the truth about Gandhi that you were never told. To understand the end of the story, we must go back to the beginning. Not to India, but to South Africa, 1893. A young lawyer arrives, just 23 years old. He is not wearing khadi, he is wearing a crisp English suit. He is educated in London. He considers himself a subject of the empire. The turning point is legendary. Pietermaritzburg Station. He is thrown off a train for daring to sit in a first-class compartment while being Indian. It is the spark that lights the fire of his activism. But here is where the history books stop reading the page.
You don't belong here.
This is injustice. I have paid for tickets.
Gandhi was fighting for rights, yes. But specifically for Indian rights. During his 20 years in South Africa, his writings reveal a hierarchy that placed Indians below the British, but distinctly above the native black Africans. In 1904, he wrote to a health officer in Johannesburg, complaining that the council must withdraw Kafirs, a derogatory term for black Africans, from a location where Indians resided. He wrote, quote, about the mixing of the Kafirs with the Indians, I must confess I feel most strongly. He campaigned for separate entrances at the Durban post office so that Indians would not have to share the same door as black South Africans. At this stage in his life, Gandhi was not fighting for universal equality. He was fighting for the Indian community to be recognized as partners in the empire, distinct from the native population. It is a hard truth to swallow. The man who would later inspire Martin Luther King Jr. began his political journey holding views that, by today's standards, were undeniably prejudiced. Was he a product of his time? Certainly. But to ignore this chapter is to ignore the complexity of his evolution. Gandhi did not just experiment with politics. He experimented with himself, with his body, with his desires. He called them experiments with truth. But behind that noble title were choices that have disturbed many readers of his own writings. Married at 13, Gandhi was open about the years he spent obsessively attached to sex. He called it his animal passion. The guilt over his wife's pregnancy while his father lay dying haunted him. For Gandhi, the body became the enemy and celibacy became his battlefield. In 1906, he took a vow of Brahmacharya, total celibacy, even though he was still married. He framed it as a spiritual elevation, a necessary sacrifice to serve the nation. But how he tested that vow would later draw accusations of manipulation and abuse. In his later years, Gandhi began what he called tests of his self-control. He slept naked beside young women, including his own grandniece, Manu, claiming that if he could resist arousal, it proved his mind had conquered his flesh. These women were often devoted followers, raised to see him as a near saint. In one case, Manu, just in her late teens, shared his bed regularly as part of these so-called experiments. Questioned by his own associates, Gandhi defended himself, saying he needed to test his resolve under the hardest conditions. To his supporters, this was an extreme, even bizarre, form of spiritual discipline. To his critics, it was something darker, a man in immense power using young women as instruments in his private struggle with desire. Consent, when mixed with reverence and dependence, becomes difficult to define. Even some of his closest allies were disturbed. One longtime associate, Pyarelal, and Gandhi's own secretary, Mahadev Desai, struggled to defend these practices. Others stayed silent, torn between devotion and discomfort. Here lies the core contradiction. Gandhi demanded absolute self-control, but staged these tests in real lives, on real bodies. His journals describe the turmoil he felt. Yet the young women, brought into his experiment, did not get to opt out of the weight of his legend. Was Gandhi a predator? A misguided ascetic? A flawed idealist lost in his own theories? History does not hand us a simple answer. But it does demand we acknowledge that the man millions call Mahatma made choices that cannot just be excused as spiritual exercises. While Gandhi wrestled with his inner world, the outer world was collapsing. The British Empire was weakening. Demands for independence were rising. And in the middle stood Gandhi, idolized by millions, yet increasingly out of sync with some of the forces he helped unleash. His strategy of non-violent resistance inspired the masses. Marches, boycotts, hunger strikes, he turned moral pressure into political force. But his influence was never absolute. Other leaders, like Subhash Chandra Bose, wanted a more aggressive path. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, representing the Muslim League, demanded safeguards that Gandhi did not fully embrace. Gandhi believed in a unified India, Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs and others sharing one nation. But this vision often collided with the fears and realities of minorities. Critics argue that he underestimated Muslim anxieties and at times spoke from a moral height that did not always translate into practical, political guarantees. The result was partition. In 1947, the subcontinent was cut into India and Pakistan. What followed was one of the largest and bloodiest migrations in human history. Trains arriving at stations filled not with passengers, but with corpses. Villages burned. Neighbors turned into enemies. Gandhi opposed partition to the end. He walked through riot-torn streets, fasting to shame killers into silence. In some places, it worked. In many others, the violence rolled on, ignoring even his moral authority. Was Gandhi responsible for partition? Historians disagree. Many blame British divide and rule policies. Others point to hardened communal politics. But one criticism remains, that Gandhi, for all his moral force, could not or would not adapt his strategy enough to prevent a catastrophe he saw coming. On 30th January 1948, Gandhi was assassinated by Nathuram Godse, a Hindu nationalist who believed Gandhi had betrayed Hindu interests by accommodating Muslims. The man who preached non-violence died at the hands of extremism he could not stop. In death, the man became something larger than life, a symbol. And, like most symbols, his rough edges were sanded down. The uncomfortable chapters were closed. The complicated human being was sealed inside a simple story. Today, Gandhi stands frozen in stone on campuses, in capitals, in villages. For some, he is a godlike figure. For others, a symbol of oppression or hypocrisy. But the truth is more uncomfortable. He was neither angel nor demon. He was a human being. Brilliant, courageous, flawed, often wrong. Sometimes ahead of his time, sometimes trapped in it. You were not lied to by a single person. You were lied to by a system that prefers simple stories. Schoolbooks, political speeches, motivational posters, they need heroes, not humans. They need clean narratives, not messy contradictions. Does knowing Gandhi's racism in South Africa erase his role in inspiring civil rights movements? No. Does his political miscalculation about partition mean his non-violent resistance was meaningless? No. But the reverse is also true. His achievements do not erase his failures. His suffering does not justify the suffering he caused in the name of experiments. When we worship people, we stop learning from them. When we protect them from criticism, we protect ourselves from reality. The real Gandhi is not the statue, not the slogan, not the quote you share on social media. The real Gandhi is a case study in how greatness and failure can exist in the same body. So what do we do with this knowledge? We do not have to tear down every statue. We do not have to burn every book. But we do have to stop lying to children, to each other, and to ourselves. We can honor Gandhi's contributions while refusing to hide his shadows. Here, on Livion Tales, we are not here to destroy heroes. We are here to see them clearly. To understand what really happened, and what it means for us now. If one of the most praised figures of the 20th century can have a past this complicated, what else have we been told only half the story about? This was the side of Gandhi you were never taught. If you want more untold truths about the icons you thought you knew, subscribe and join us next week when we uncover another legend and the reality behind the myth.